So the next step that I followed is basically rounding over the back side of the body, basically using a half-inch round, 1 inch diameter bit, just going around the edges. Obviously, when you do that, the cutout part is not gonna contact, so you gotta make sure that you don't go through. One thing is, didn't expect it, but don't know if you can see it, but a little chip out here, right? Too close. I was originally considering this, saying, hey, it's not gonna hit the radius, so it's not a problem, but I forgot to think about this hole, so that kind of chipped out a little bit. But yeah, I'll just sand it down and make it look good. And this has already been sanded roughly to blend it in a little bit, but hopefully this will be a comfortable body. Can't see the backside anyway, so comfort is the only thing that matters. So today I'm working on the screws on the trem unit. The trem unit came with these screws, which are Phillips slash flathead screws, and they look like they were like cheap hardware store bought screws. It actually took over a month to get these, and I actually got the wrong kind, wrong thread the first time, about to get these from China. But now we are looking at black. I don't know if this is anodized. It's not even stainless, because stainless one only comes in chrome screws, which, even then, the shiny finish on this part of the trem and this doesn't match, so it's a little off, but I think it's a lot better than the shiny Phillips slash flat hardware store bought screws. Okay, so these screws are pretty widely available on eBay. So basically, the task is figuring out what is the size of the screw. This is Chinese base, so odds are it's an M metric screw, right? And you basically look at this thing and say, well, I don't know if you can see it. This is kind of too loose. So it's not an M4, an M3. Oh, oops. M3 is, you kind of screw it in. It says, hey, it's just the right size. The second point is, how long is the thread? And this is not very good. Oh, by the way, this is a Hillman gauge piece of plastic. You could buy it at Home Depot, Lowe's, or something. Hillman hardware gauge for like maybe $2, less than $5 definitely. And you was put the thread part, the bottom of the head, and say, hey, it's a 6 millimeter. And then the question becomes, like, the M3 has two thread. The 0.50 is the coarse thread, and the 0.35 is the fine thread, or the other way around, I forget which. So if you look in terms of these threads, and let's see if I can zoom in. Maybe that's the max. So the middle one is the actual screw that is, I'm shaking. The middle one is the actual thread used in this guitar. The one on the top is the one I first bought, because I took a caliper to measure the thread, and I was convinced it was a 0.35 fine thread, so I bought that. And there wasn't very many of those around, so I had to order it from China and waited a long time, but it didn't fit. And of course, I didn't know what it was exactly. And the black one, I don't know if you could even see the thread, is basically the matching thread. So it's M3 0.50 times 6 millimeter would be the sort of the dimension of the screw. And so if you search that on eBay, you can buy a whole bunch of those things. Moving on to the neck. So the neck shaping is done. This is still a sort of a dummy. But the next step is basically the inlay, and after the inlay, going to fretting. So this is been thinking about this quite a bit. Original concept was not to have any fingerboard markers on the fingerboard side, the fret side of the fingerboard, but only on the dots on the side. But I got the dots kind of positioned in the middle between the fretboard and the neck, which was intended, except it doesn't really jump out. And some of the pearls, when I sanded it down, it kind of lost the luster, and it's just kind of dark dot, and it's not that visible. I guess in hindsight, I'll probably never do dots at the border between the fretboard and the fingerboard, but just put it in the dark fingerboard, the dark background on the fingerboard, because it'll be more visible. So now I'm thinking, if I'm playing, if I'm a little bit distracted or something, and forgot where I was, and looked down the neck to see where I was, I could probably get lost with just these. So yeah, if it showed up like this, it'd be okay, but some of these is like, yeah. So decided to go ahead with the sort of the diamond shaped inlay. So this is very traditional or typical of the Ovation legends, custom legends, to have this diamond shaped inlay. Although it's not the slitted diamond, like these have the four slits. The Ovation diamonds are just a regular. It is really just a diamond, right? Or what is it? Rhombus, slanted rectangle, a trapezoid maybe. But to distinguish that from, again, tribute, right? Not Ovation copy. So probably going to go with this design. Kind of debated of what to do with the first fret and the 24th fret, because it's kind of an overkill. But I got enough pieces, yeah, of these things, so it's probably gonna go all the way. Okay, so I started cutting the inlay recess in the fretboard. So basically, starting out, many different ways to do it. You just need to be able to mark the fretboard one way or another, so you know where to route, right? That's a sort of micro route. So in my case, basically what I did, there is like 12 or 14 or something inlays that I have to cut, which is square. Circles are infinitely easier to do, because you just decide the position and drill, and it'll fit, right? But if it's square, basically you have to cut it out, or any other shape than a circle, you have to cut it out. So what I did was I made a little paper template that'll fit. It's a little bit oversized, and basically like centered marked the center of the fretboard with blue painter's tape, and then basically took sort of the diagonal dimension to determine the midpoint of the fret in this direction. Drew a line to the middle, and then put this thing over it, and with the mechanical pencil basically mark the outlines. Here I haven't cut it yet, to know where to cut. So I am using, this is not really sure what it is, 432, which is 1/8. No, it can't be. This is probably like almost like a 1/4 inch. Nah, it can't be. Anyways, it is a 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, probably 3/8 inch bit. That doesn't sound right either. Anyways, so here is a bit I am using. Basically, this is a rough cut. I can't cut to the line because with the corners, obviously the radius of this bit is too big. So I'll go into like a much smaller. This is like a 0.125 radius bit. Even this is kind of big. Here are the sets of let's see, the bits I have. I don't think there's the smallest one, but I'm not gonna go there because it just doesn't need to be precise. Once I engrave, recess, I don't know what the word is, route the hole for the markers or the inlay, just pour epoxy, which has been tinted black, into it, and then just squish this in so the epoxy will come around over the edge and fill in the gap. Right? So if you're using a dark fretboard ebony, this is I believe Madagascar ebony, so probably not as dark as African Gabon ebony. It's pretty invisible. Where if the margin, the gap between the inlay and the hole. So it's not a problem. With rosewood, it is a problem because you got the brown color, which you can't really fill with the black filler. It becomes very, very obvious. So I use a very rudimentary setup for this. This is sort of Dremel's base, router base, which is not very good. You could kind of see that I've made repairs because it's been breaking down on me. But anyways, because it is a fairly imprecise device, basically I have to pre-cut. So here is the inlay. So I pre-cut a hole in this wood to see how it fits. And this one, actually, the inlay is recessed underneath the wood, right? So it sinks below the surface, so it's not good. The second cut here, the inlay is actually above the wood, just slightly. So if I drag my finger, it'll basically catch. You could feel that this is proud. And if it's proud, basically the epoxy will cover the gap, and then you just sand it down to be flush. Of course, the problem is the front layer, which is very, very pretty right now. I could sand through that, right? So that's kind of what happened with the side dots, where it lost its prettiness and it's just dullness. But anyways, so I'll be roughing out with the larger bit, and as I come, once I do that, I'll get very precise on the edge with the 0.125 inch bit that I'll be using, okay? By the way, so this video is a few minutes long, which is probably a few minutes longer than it should be. But getting to here, I probably spent an hour and a half or something like that, trowel cutting, measuring, and all those kind of things. So, that's the part of building the guitar that a lot of YouTube viewers probably won't see. It feels like you could build a guitar in 2 hours or something like that, but that's not the case. So here's the first inlay. First inlay in. My hand's shaky. So it is just slightly proud of the fretboard, so it requires. Oh, I shouldn't probably zoom. Makes it too shaky. So yeah, this is the fretboard, and so I got, I think, 12 more to go. It's gonna take a bit longer to get this thing done. Okay, so just went through. Well, I got all the routes done, and test fitting the inlays. So even the inlays, you have to make sure that there is a certain level of color match, right? You don't want too much of a drastic change in color, like consistency, especially like when you have the two dots for the 12th and the 24th fret. You kind of want it to look the same, not too far apart. So on by the time I got to the 24th fret, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 12 and 13 inlays. And I kind of ran out of the ones I like in terms of reflectability. So I chose the one that reflects, but in terms of color, right? So all of these things are sort of green blue, which is the Pawa ebony, no, abalone color, but this is a little weak on the color, but that's, the way it is. So in order to get the 14 dots, I said, I bought 20 dots. So these are all kind of rejects, right? There's nothing wrong with the shape or anything, but just the reflectivity, it's not shiny, and the color is just not there. So, just because you only need 10 dots or something like that, you probably shouldn't buy 10 dots, but maybe buy 2 packets of 20 or something, just so you have you could pick and choose the one you want to use. Okay. Okay, so the inlays have been placed in those cavity inlay route. Basically, it is an epoxy, a 2-part epoxy, 5-minute epoxy, which is why I didn't have a chance to film it, because I barely had time enough to get this thing done before it starts hardening. So you put a little bit of the resin and the hardener together, and basically mix it with a little bit of fresco colors to give it the black color. The black color does usually pretty well blend with the black of the fingerboard. It's really dark brown, blackish brown. And so basically I'll just dab a epoxy into the cavity, and then I'll put the inlay and press it in, so you can see that there's going to be squeeze out through the edge, and that is meant to fill the void at the edge of the inlay. And this time I did a little bit, for the first time I used my airflow gun to basically heat up the area. Oops, it came on. To see if I could get the air bubbles out. So in the past, when I have done this, you get air bubbles. So basically what I'll do here is file it down or sand it down to the to the fret surface. But the problem I encounter is you get pinholes because there's air bubbles in it. So this time, basically by heating the area, I was hoping to get the air bubbles out. So there will be no pinhole, and I won't have to go through this a second time. On the higher frets, basically I have tape on there to protect the fret slots. So the fret slots becomes really close with the inlays. So as you could see, this one will definitely filled into the fret slot, which would have been a bit of a problem, that I have to recut the fret slots as I fret it. So to try to prevent that, basically the tape is there to protect it. Okay. So here's an intermediary video of the inlays. Basically did a preliminary sanding, or actually filing, over all the epoxy. So the epoxy that was covering is gone now, and it's showing the inlays. And you could probably hear the inlay is still a little bit proud, so basically it needs to be filed down more with this file. Okay, so here it is, all sanded. Let's see how close I could get. Maybe not. And you see some of my pencil mark, sort of quality checking. And remember how I was trying to heat it up to get the air bubbles out of the thing? Maybe I didn't do it enough. It didn't work. It's kind of the same as usual. So there are small voids, which maybe, yeah, it's kind of hard to say. Like right in here, if I get my X-Acto, I could fit my X-Acto in there, right? So that has to be done, but everything otherwise, this is very smooth. In terms of alignment, let's see, I drifted off a little bit this way. So here I'm about 1 millimeters off of center, and here I go back to center again, so it's okay. It's kind of drifting slightly, just 1 millimeter over this line. So so the human eye probably not noticeable, but that's what it is.